I'm a lawyer.
You make sure you are on camera.
Okay. I'm a lawyer. Well, let me start back. First of all, I am the son of two wonderful civil rights leaders and activists who met here in Washington, D.C. in 1968 during the Poor People's Campaign. I don't know if any of you all remember that effort. But they met here. My father was an aide to Dr. King the night before his assassination. And he led a delegation of young people and activists on a mule train. Anybody old enough to remember what a mule train is? But a mule train, as I learned, was a form of transportation where you would ride on a buggy part of the way and then you would walk part of the way. But that's what they did all the way from Memphis, Tennessee to Washington, D.C., through Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and they came here to Washington, D.C. My mother was working for the Washington Evening Star newspaper. Anybody old enough to remember that newspaper? And my grandmother, who she was living together with, was working for Howard Law School. And so my parents met here in Washington, D.C., and I was born shortly thereafter. And they spent their lives working in the civil rights movement, particularly as pioneers in the Muslim community, building Muslim communities across the country in Oklahoma City and Detroit, Michigan, and Memphis, Tennessee. They also built schools and businesses. And so this was the kind of training that I received. My father became one of the first Muslims to enter politics back in the 70s and early 80s. Ultimately, he was elected as the first Muslim to office in the state of Tennessee as a member of the Memphis Council, as an at-large member of the Memphis Council, after filing a class action lawsuit to end the decades of discrimination that took place in Memphis. And in fact, his classmate was Marion Barry. And Marion sent my siblings and I, who were attending Howard University, to Memphis, Tennessee with some resources to help get him elected. So, that is a little bit about my origin story. But, since coming to Washington, D.C. to complete or kind of coming home, if you will, to Washington, D.C. to complete my first, I started off at the United States Air Force Academy, where I studied astronautical engineering. My goal was to become an astronaut. And so, you're looking at your son about, what he's, doing in school is great news. And so I started to become an astronaut. And after experiencing discrimination, actually, at the Air Force Academy, I left the academy and came here to Howard, which my mother always told me would be a much more warm and welcoming place for me. First, to give him my name, and secondly, give him my identity. And so we definitely were welcomed at Howard. I went immediately to work for the former member of the Congressional Black Caucus, former chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressman Merv Dimely. And that's kind of what started my, kind of edification of Washington, D.C. That opened the doors and allowed me to meet people like Marion Barry and all of the political leaders of that time, from Sharon Pratt Kelly and many others, and also really learn from these leaders. And so that's what I did. I learned from these leaders. I worked for them. I served as the special counsel. Well, first, I served as a counsel to Council Member Michael Brown, and he was responsible for the special committee on statehood. And we studied statehood. We learned about the pathways to statehood, and there absolutely is a pathway to statehood, and that's what we studied. Second of all, we then went to work for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee as our chief counsel, and Sheila Jackson Lee, as you all may know, was over both the crime subcommittee as well as the civil rights subcommittee. So we got a chance to understand statehood from the federal perspective. Then we went to work for the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and then came to work first as special counsel to Mayor Gray when he was elected, and then as chief of staff of the largest DC government agency. And so, but throughout all that time, and even afterwards, I also worked for black newspapers here. The Washington Afro, wrote for the Washington Informer, did some work for the Griot, and also ran my own law firm. Ultimately, we kind of combined our technology skills with our legal background and created a platform that's called Abe Legal. Think of it as an Uber, but for lawyers. We schedule appointments for lawyers across the country with people remotely. It is an amazing platform that has helped lawyers to generate over $2 million in additional revenue since our launch, and helped hundreds of people find quality lawyers. And so that's kind of how we got here. In addition to that, I run a nonprofit organization called STEM for Us. And STEM for Us has been working in the community in all wards to help young people stay safe by giving them the ability to connect with mentors, to keep them motivated and guided. We host hackathons, and they've been very successful. None of the young people that we've worked with have fallen into the trap of violence, and so we're very proud about that. And from that is how I decided to run for mayor, or how I was called to run for mayor, because for the past 2 years, we had a program that would keep our young people safe, make sure that they had help doing their homework, which, as you all might know, one of the number one determinants of whether or not a child is going to be either engaged in class the next day or disruptive. Also, giving that child a healthy meal, and then pairing that child with a mentor. How many of us had mentors when we were coming up? I definitely did. And that's the reason why I was able to both go to engineering school and law school. But those are the things that we wanted to make sure that every DC student had access to. And we came before the council. We asked the council in fact, we were asked, come before the council and seek, direct appropriations for the program we had. And that's what we did. For 2 years in a row, we came before the council. The first year, they said they ran out of money. They said, but come back, Talib. But funny, even though they ran out of money for us, they found $500 million to give to the Washington Wizards. $500 million. They said, no worries. I worked with these guys in the council. I knew, that they, had a good heart. So I said, okay, I'll come back next year, make sure my program was this time, even better. And I talked to every member of the council or their staff except one. And they said, Talib, we got you. This is a great program. We're going to make sure you get something. And we went throughout the entire process, testified, submitted testimony, and then they said, oh, I'm sorry, Talib, we ran out of money. We cut, it was $1 billion, in fact. And I was trying to figure out, how? DC has all this money. How did they cut this money? Well, I found out 2 days later. 2 days later, I came back to the next council hearing and found out they had given $1.5 billion to the Washington Commanders. And that's when a mentor pulled me to the side and said, Talib, the people who are basically calling the shots, Janeese George and Kenyan McDuffie, and pretty much all of the council except Robert White, they don't care about young people like you do. And really, they don't consider you even their constituents. The real constituents are the people who they just voted to give the money to. And if you really want to see change, you're gonna have to run for mayor and be that change. I was like, wow, that's a, kind of an idea that I never thought about before, right? I've been a back, of the room kind of guy, an advisor to the mayors, counsel to the mayor. But, he said something that made me think. He said, I'm gonna tell you a couple of things that are gonna happen. First of all, the mayor's not gonna run, and it came to be true. And then he said, the federal government is gonna try to take over the DC government. And that happened. And he said one other thing. There's an unknown guy in New York who's running for mayor, and he's gonna become the next mayor of New York. And if he can do it, why can't you do it? So When those things happen, I began to think that maybe this is the Almighty trying to tell me something. And I tell you, brothers and sisters, every day that I have been in this campaign, I've seen the ratification of that. This Friday, in my background, I've done some regulatory work, particularly in the energy field. So I sat and listened to the testimony, the oversight hearing for the Public Service Commission. Do you all know Public Service Commission? Public Service Commission is responsible for basically making sure that Washington Gas and PEPCO doesn't basically charge us an extraordinary and unconscionable amount of money, which is what they're doing currently. And I listened to the brother, nice, young, articulate black man who was the chairman of the Public Service Commission, essentially explain why the Public Service Commission could do nothing about the outlandish fees that we're paying our utilities. Nothing. He basically sounded as a lobbyist for Washington Gas and PEPCO. And I was a little dumbfounded. And I was saying to myself, are you saying that there's nothing that you can do? But then I heard the dose of reality come after him, and that was the Office of the People's Counsel, Sandra Batavius Fry. And she explained, first of all, that the Public Service Commission was responsible for acting in whose interest? Whose interest? Whose interest? I'm asking. No, not the council. Think of the name. The public's interest. Thus the name Public Service Commission. But yet it has taken the position that it should be acting as a neutral arbiter, which oftentimes sides with the wealthy elite. This is the same game that was represented in the vote to give $1.5 billion, which actually, as Greater Washington says, actually is going to be $6.6 billion, ultimately, to the Washington Commanders and every other large deal that happens in this city. This is nothing but a grab or a giveaway to the billionaires. The billionaires have co-opted the people who are supposed to be looking out for us. And particularly the most vulnerable of us are seniors and those who are below the poverty line. And these people don't care about them. Neither Janeese George nor Kenyan McDuffie. They're both bought and paid by the billionaire class. And you look at their monies that they have in their bank accounts. Each one of them have a multi-million-dollar bank account helping their campaigns. Both of them. That's a fact. You all know this, right? And, the rest of us, are struggling to actually, get and meet these high standards of 1,000 people, to donate at least $40 to our campaign. These whole systems are set up nothing but to keep the power in place and prevent the power from being dispersed. And that's the reason why I personally call for us to have a united front. I would call for all of the so-called fringe candidates, that's everybody else except the billionaire candidates, and we know who those are, and it got one more who just got to raise Finch and Orange. All the other, non-billionaire candidates, I believe we should come together. Because you had some great ideas, sister. You know what I mean? And I bet you we work together. We can make sure that, we got that 1,000, donor limit bypassed, and even the 2,000 signatures that we need bypassed. And I think we can take back this city. In fact, it needs to stop being a city. This place needs to be a state. Why isn't DC a state? Do you know why DC is not a state? Again, this is one of the things we study. The reason why DC isn't a state is because in Virginia and Maryland, how many stakeholders, how many people are responsible for public policy? How many people do you have to lobby in order for a law to be passed? How many? In Virginia, there's like about 123. In Maryland, there's like about 160 people who have to be touched, including the governors of those states. Guess how many people have to be touched in D.C.? 14. 14. 13 members of the council and the mayor. So whose interest does that serve to have such a low number of people who have to be contacted? Who? The billionaires, right? The wealthy elite benefit from this, broken structure, right? Thus the reason why it's gone on for over 150 years, right? But who else benefits? The people who are in office. The people who are in office, they get the perks, the same perks that the 160 people or the 120 people in Virginia get. So it behooves them to prevent a disbursement of power. We could set all the ANC commissioners could have real power if the council wanted it, but they don't want that because that would mean they would get less perks, right? So from day one, if me and a team of all of you all decide to run together, from day one, I would say that we would re-establish, or we could, from ourselves, would not even need vote of Congress. We could disperse the powers to the members of the ANC and call them, a de facto state legislature. That's what we could do. We could even create an office of the governor without congressional approval. We could change the names of the wards and give them city names on our own. The council has, in the Home Rule Act, the ability to do that. More importantly, do you know how much money we spend on statehood every year? What percentage of the budget? We have $22 billion in our budget. You all Americans, you should know. What percentage? You would think that we spend, 10%, right? That sounds like a reasonable amount. 15% if you're really serious, right? No less than 5 or 1%, right? You think? We spend less than 0.002% of our budget every year. $250,000 in statehood every freaking year. That shows you they don't care about it, right? And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plan, prayerfully we come together. I plan for us to spend no less than $500 million, which is only 2% of our budget. No less than 2% of our budget on statehood. And where would I spend that money? Brothers and sisters, we have the best lawyers, the best lobbyists, the best public relations firms in the world. In the world. If we spent that money on locally based public relations firms, lobbying firms, law firms, we could flood the courts. We could flood the state capitals of every state across the country to get a constitutional amendment if that's what we needed. We could make sure Congress is on board. Every member of Congress is a resident of D.C. at some point in their time, right? We have the only state that has that ability to be able to touch every single member of Congress and the president. Brothers and sisters, I believe that we have the ability to become a state within 24 months if we were serious about it. And with that, we could immediately recover $3.2 billion in lost revenues that we're not having, that we could use to fund what our brother was talking about earlier, which is in my campaign talking points, a universal basic income app, an app that directly connects to your banking platform, whatever bank you have, that is based on, and I call it universal, but it's not really truly universal because it's only for people who make less than $250,000. Now, $250,000 or have less than $250,000 in their bank because it's going to be tied, it'll be checking your bank. And that's the reason why it's such an effective platform. Because we would be basically giving people money, not just one-time payment of $2,000 a month, but not just that, incentive payments based upon whether or not people are doing things that are actually helping them and helping our community. So for example, if you go to a PTA meeting, you get a $100 benefit, right? If you go and actually, if your child gets on the honor roll, why don't we celebrate our parents, right? Think about the parents who are the parents of professional basketball players or football players or soccer players. They get paid ultimately. Why not pay people who can get their child through high school without getting shot or killed or in jail, and then especially those who get college scholarships? That should be the same type of, remuneration, right, that we give to, or that, parents of professional athletes get. That's the type of incentivization that we could do with the technology that is out there. And how do we pay for it? Brothers and sisters, we pay for it, one, by this recoupment, as I mentioned before, as a state. But second of all, we pay for it by taxing the people who have been benefiting from the $22 billion budget forever. The majority of the people. And who are those? Not the people in this room, but the billionaires. The billionaires have to pay back the money that they have stolen from the people. And we're going to tax the billionaires. We're going to tax the billionaires and all those billionaire companies that are out here. They got to pay back the money that they did not share with us, the people. So we'll have money for after-school programs that the council, Janeese George and Kenyan McDuffie said no to. We'll have money to end the taxation on our seniors. These seniors' taxes, what I'm talking about, are the property taxes on our seniors, right? That they have to pay for the developments that are coming into our neighborhood twice. First, they pay taxes to then be given to the billionaires so they can build these developments without paying anything. And then they have to pay when their property taxes rise and they can't afford to pay their taxes, and then their homes get taken from them. That needs to end, and prayerfully under my administration will end on day one. We'll cap the taxes on our seniors, like they have done in California. We can do the same thing here in DC. Finally, dear brothers and sisters, we got to really focus on the issues of our youth. Our youth are woefully unprepared for the economy of tomorrow. They're really unprepared for the economy of today. Let's think about it. The majority of black children in this city, especially when you look at the DC public schools, about 65% of the children come from the black community. A significant majority of these children are unintended children. Now think about that. What does it mean to be a child that's born, right, by happenstance, as a mistake? A parent who, again, we talk about our Caucasian colleagues, most of these people are married, right? A vast majority of them, in terms of their cohorts in DC public school, are coming from married households. So they're preparing for their children to arrive, the majority of them. What does that mean? They're making sure that their bodies are prepared. They're making sure that their minds are prepared, right? And what happens oftentimes, our children, they become, because they're unintended, they become addicted through actually the addiction of their parents. Their parents are smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol or consuming all kinds of other drugs before their pregnancies, right? During their pregnancy, sadly, and thereafter. Some of our students come to school smelling like they have basically worked in a dispensary. I mean, honestly, am I saying anything that you all don't know? Yeah, I think you all know, right? Yeah. On top of it, our children are being freaking breastfed, telephone, and social media access from their infancy. Literally, pacifiers, modern day pacifiers, are cell phones that are being put in front of these children's minds. As an educator myself, I know the impact of seeing pictures moving in such a rapid pace and how that damages the minds of our children. And so when they come to classes from day one, the content, which is not delivered in the same type of 90-second increments they get in these algorithm-based social media platforms, they can't deal with it. The children are acting basically totally disinterested and unattentive because that's not what they're used to for the past 4 to 5 years before they came to class, right? So they have two components, and we just got finished with a white paper about this that we submitted to PEPCO. Their minds, NIH says a child who's exposed to marijuana smoke from their parents, right? in this time frame, their minds, their DNA has been impacted. And so a lot of these children that are coming to school presenting themselves as special education children, right? Children with an IEP, they are coming from those households. So we have to go into these homes. We have to, as was taught earlier, we have to coach our parents. We have to prepare our children to become parents, first of all. We have abandoned the idea of marriage in our communities. Abandoned it. Like, oh, that's for old time. That's insane. We are literally spiritually being killed every single day. And dear brothers and sisters, not by mistake, it's not by happenstance. We've read the Epstein files. Who owns the record companies who our children try to emulate themselves? Who owns the motion picture industry? And now who owns TikTok? Huh? We know who. It's the Zionists. And they have been intentionally focused on bringing us as a people, first killing us spiritually and then killing us physically. That's their goal. Just like they do in Palestine. Their goal is to do that same thing here in the United States. And that's the reason why we're in war right now. Come on, dear brothers and sisters, this is not about a black and white thing, really. It's not. Because who are those people? There were no black people that they announced were killed, but we know that there's dozens, if not hundreds or more. I mean, I was in the military, you in the military, you know. You've seen the impact of these munitions that come on, it's not wood and metal that is going up. These are bodies who are in those buildings. Every one of those facilities that got hit. And there are thousands of bombs that struck. So don't tell me that there's only 6 people who have been killed. You know, so again, and the council refuses to say anything about Palestine, anything about war in the Middle East, anything. Oh, because we don't get into foreign policy. That's ridiculous. And the mayor said the same thing. You know, the mayor was confronted a year and a half ago at her outday party by some brothers and sisters from the Palestinian movement. It was like, okay, mayor, say free Palestine, say genocide. You know, she said, well, we will overcome, we shall overcome. You know, and got all the religious leaders to basically surround her and say the same thing. This is BS. As mayor, it is our duty to become the chief peace advocate in District of Columbia. That is our obligation because you have an obligation to all the embassies that are here. You represent them too, right? And so while they can't say things, it's your obligation to say the things that they can't say. So dear brothers and sisters, I know we've gone over the time. You know, I say 3 things. 1, my goal upon being mayor is to make DC safe, affordable, and free as the 51st state.
Thank you, sir.
And I pray that we can all come together as the various so-called French campaigns or revolutionary campaigns. Let's call them that. Revolutionary campaigns. We can come together and do what my father used to say: it's working together, is winning together. And so I pray that the Almighty will pull us all together, and that we will work together, and that by the help of the Almighty, we will win together. Thank you, dear brother.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. It was very nice.